Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with the Amazing Spider-Man 365. This is the supersized 30th anniversary issue. So it's kind of funny, as even though this says this is the 30th anniversary issue, the print date on this book was August 1992. So we're already almost coming up on 60 years at this point, because from, what was it, 1992 to 2020, 28 years exactly. So, whew, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, this comic was absolutely amazing. And I first and foremost want to give a shout out to Eric, who's part of, me and him are part of this group called Sacred Collectibles. And he hooked me up with this issue, so I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much. And yeah, this comic has a lot of great top tier talent on it. And what I specifically really enjoy is the fact that it's the first cameo appearance of Miguel O'Hara, the Spider-Man of 2099. And I know it's hard to see here, but because this was a 30-year anniversary issue, I like that they did this, what is that 3D effect of the Amazing Fantasy number 15, which is Spidey's very first appearance. So very cool stuff there. Now let's go ahead and dive into this book, because there are several different stories, and they all don't kind of tie into it, but some big things happen that, you know, back in the day nobody really knew was going to take off. So for like example, we have the saga of Spidey's parents, father's sins, and we'll go ahead and get into all of these. And then of course a special preview of Spider-Man 2099. And of course, Spider-Man was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. Now, the first story is called Fathers and Sins. And before we even get into this, I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I was really excited when I read this book. But we have David Michelini, writer, Mark Bagley doing the penciling, which is good stuff, Randy Emberlin doing the ink, Rick Parker doing the lettering, Bob Sharon doing the coloring, and then here's everyone else that was working on the book. And of course right here, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, and then I love that they said inspiration, and then they put John Romita Sr., which is really cool. But anyway, so we're open up on the ominous look of the lizard, and right here it says he no longer suffers the searing throb of voodoo drums in his blood, no longer hears the witch's screams in his brain. His mind, though wounded and weary, is at last focused. So if you guys are wondering what we're talking about here, Todd McFarlane in his Spidey run, which was, it's called Spider-Man, and Spider-Man number 1, the way he did the paneling and whatnot, because we keep seeing this thrum, thrum, and the lizard just looks otherworldly. It's terrifying. So definitely check out the Todd Fathers run on Spider-Man. It's great stuff. I will try to have the reviews of, I think I have 1 and 2 and a couple of others on there at one point in history, but we'll get there. We're just going to move forward. And so this is the Connor family here. So we can kind of see what's going to be happening. So we go from terrifying, ominous to kind of a happy scene where this is, I believe his name's Billy, and it's obviously his birthday. And the mom is saying, "Oh, I got to go to the bedroom. I got a surprise for you." And Spider-Man is like, "Wait a minute, my Spidey senses are going off." And again, I like how we just jump right into it. And you see that Kurt's trying to talk to his wife, saying, "I'm in control. It's taken every little bit of my willpower to talk to you." And then he's like, "Call out to Billy. Bring the boy here." And right here, you think that he's going to kill him, but he goes, "Believe me, son, this hurts me more than it does you." And he actually claws his kid. And then this is where enter the Spider-Man. So you're kind of wondering, what does all this mean here? Why is he clawing his own kid? And then you see his eyes after being attacked by Spider-Man. He's lost all control of Kurt Connors. At this point, he is all lizard. And I said this before, these characters are tragic. Kurt Connors, what is his name? Kirk Langstrom, the Man-Bat, characters that kind of have that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type thing, mad scientists. Though I kind of wish, like I kind of like in Nick Spencer's current run where not Killer Crocs, yeah, I get myself confused. The Lizard has that inhibitor on the back of his neck now where he can actually live as a normal human being. So I kind of like to see that these type of characters eventually have redemption arcs instead of just keeps going and going. But as you can see, everyone always wants their formulas, how it just, their sins keep coming back to haunt them no matter how much they seek redemption. And that's what makes them really interesting characters. Now, a big old fight ensues. You can kind of jump past this. And then you notice, the mom's wanting to call the police. And she goes, "You don't hate your father, Billy. It's the drugs he took to regenerate his lost arm. They turned him into that monster. You understand, don't you, Billy?" And I love how the art team just gives him this look of just hatred and to really make sure to emphasize that claw mark that his father just left him. So you can see that he's not exactly okay, especially on his birthday. And so some things ensue, and like I said, I don't want to spoil this book. I want y'all to pick this up. But these fight scenes with the Lizard and Spidey are just great work. You don't really see this type of anatomy work anymore. A lot of new comic books, you look at them and the panels are so flat and one-dimensional. I'm not trying to bash, but the proof is in the pudding. You know what I mean? But look at the way they made sure to make this always look dynamic. If you guys have ever read what is that book called? The Marvel's Guide on How to Draw or something like that. It's a really good read. But they show you how doing one panel looks flat. And then just a little bit of change of the camera angle. See what I mean? How it could just be flat, constant forward. But look at the way they change it and how Spider-Man leaps out of the way this way. And then we have the Lizard going down this way. Make the paneling more dynamic and interesting for the reader. And you don't see a lot of that anymore. And it hurts to not. Now, what I like here is something that happened that causes the sewers to collapse. And we see Spidey getting buried. And he's not sure, which, it's kind of omits what Steve Ditko proved back in the day. But he's got half of Penn Station on his back. And Spider-Man's like, "I'm not going anywhere." So we're just kind of like, is this it for our web-slinging wall crawler? However, now before we get into this right here, I'm going to pause right here because there's an interlude. Again, I love how a lot of these old writers, original writers like Michelini here, because he's been in the game for a while, Claremont, etc., so forth, they do these interludes. And so May gets some visitors, and it causes her to faint. But we're not going to get a whole lot into this. The one thing I will spoil, because this is an older book, but I still don't want to spoil it, this is kind of the kicks off the Clone Saga. So anyway, with that interlude out of the way, we see Spidey lifting half of Penn Station off of his back. And I believe this right here is an homage. I think it's Spider-Man number 33 where he lifts that whole building off of his back. But great work by Bagley and the art team here. Just a great homage to Steve Ditko and what he did. Beautiful, beautiful work there. And, I'm kind of skipping over a lot of the story, but there's something that Connors is doing that could possibly kill him. And when Peter's stuck under the rubble here, he goes, well, maybe I should just let him, because it would really save the rest of his family. But then he thinks back and he goes, wait, I can't do that. The last time I let someone go, it cost me dearly. And they go back to Ben Parker again, with great power comes great responsibility. And this is what gives him the adrenaline rush to finally lift that and to go after Connors again. Now, I don't want to spoil what happens with this story, but it's really touching at the end of what happens. And there's a shocking reveal, too, which we are not going to ruin. However, as we jump into the next story, because as we saw, there's different stories in this one, I love this Mark Bagley artwork. Check this out. Boom. Boom. Look how gorgeous that is. Now, for those of you who collect like I do, you know better than to take this out of the book, because that would be great to put in a frame. But yeah, I'm not going to. But oh my goodness, all those action lines. Zoom, zoom. Gorgeous. Venom, Carnage, Spidey. Ah, yeah, that is something special right there. So we're going to go ahead and put that back so it doesn't get bent. And we're going to jump into the next story. Now, the next couple of stories, they're not as impactful as that first one. But what I like here is we see J. Jonah Jameson's kind of like recording some sort of memoirs. And he goes, How I Created Spider-Man. So this one is, again, David Michelini, Aaron Lapristi, I think, pencil and inks, Dave Sharp letter, Kevin Tinsley colors, David Fingeroth editor, and Tom DeFalco editor-in-chief. Now, with this story, I kind of wish, because it goes back to Spider-Man's beginnings, and this is really interesting because what J. Jonah Jameson is doing is he's musing about how Spider-Man could have come to be. He says, it seems likely that he was quite young when he first gained his powers, perhaps even attended one of the local schools. Judging from his current arrogance, he must have been quite the ladies' man. So I love the juxtapositions here because we see what Jonah's thinking compared to what Peter really was, where she's like, the umpteenth time, you're just not my type. And Jonah, the envy of his peers. You stick to the science, son, we'll stick to the chicks. And as for his home life, the boy was undoubtedly a troublemaker, a burden to his family. And we see, may I cook you your favorite breakfast, Petey? And then Ben, easy, dear, I can hardly out-wrestle him now. So I love that. That's what makes this character interesting, because he was flawed. A flawed character, always, there's room for redemption and whatnot. Even if your character has like a lot of abilities, I'm trying to think of the word, there still always has to be flaws about them that make them interesting. And so a lot of how Peter became Spider-Man, that's what makes him to this point a long time, interesting character. Now, at first when I was reading this, I was thinking, well, I wish they would have found someone more Steve Ditko style for this story. But as you continue, it goes to the wrestling match, what happened with Ben Parker, the artwork here really works. So it took a minute to grow on. I think it's just that opening page with Jonah threw me for a loop. But nonetheless, it's a real great story. And I like here where Jonah says, would his vendetta or whatever have run its course? Would he return to the lure of celebrity rather than become New York's most notorious vigilante? Because of my single-minded resentment of what he was, did I force Spider-Man to be what he is? And I like that they leave that as a question. Now, the reason I said the artwork on the last story worked is because in this one, we see Mary Jane, and she's musing back to the days of when Peter was with Gwen Stacy and how they were all friends. And this one is Stan Lee did the script, Tom DeFalco plotted it out, and the art is John Romita, which I'm assuming that this is John Romita Jr. Lettering, Chris Ianopoulos. Coloring, Joe Rosas. And John Romita, because, working alongside his dad, kind of knew the old school Steve Ditko style. So we very much in this story get it. So that's why I said I didn't mind the artwork here, because as we get into this one, this really makes more sense. She talked about how she tried to play off not wanting Peter because she saw how happy they were. So she kind of threw herself at Harry. However, as we get back into the death of Captain Stacy, which I always forget which issues it was where Captain Stacy died and Gwen died. I think it was 120, was it, guys? If I'm wrong, let me know down in the comments because I always forget. But what I like here is they go back and they really focus on how Peter's trying to tell Captain Stacy to hold on after he's about to pass. And he goes, no, Peter, it's too late. He goes, he's gone. He called me Peter. He knew and he never told. So you show the type of metal that Captain Stacy had. He was a very strong man with strong convictions. And then it comes back over about how Gwen wanted to break up with Peter because he was defending Spider-Man. And she's like, I hate Spider-Man. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. Now, what I like is how Gwen says at first, I was all about trying to throw Gwen off of Peter because I wanted him. But then she's like, I did the one thing in the world I expected I wouldn't do. And she goes, if you're my truest friend, then Gwen, listen to me. She goes, you're mistaken about Peter. The guy is bonkers for you. He only spoke up for Spider-Man because he didn't want you to spend the rest of your life being bitter. Because he cares for you. And so I really like right there that even though Mary Jane obviously wanted Peter because she was best friends with Gwen, she swallowed her pride and her, what she wanted and saw her two best friends happy again. And she's like, I'm glad I did it too because it gave Peter and Gwen the short time that they needed together to be happy. And this page here just kind of recaps everything the night that Gwen Stacy died. Just great work of the Green Goblin here, just looking, overbearing the entire page. What happened with Gwen. And then, of course, the classic panel where he's screaming no because he thought he saved her. So that is beautiful. And in the ending where Mary Jane's thinking about all this. Just beautiful, beautiful story. Now, there's one more story with the Prowler. And I'm going to jump over that because it really is a heartfelt story. And I really like what they did there. But I don't want to show off too much of the book. Reason being is because I want to show, here it is, a sneak preview of the first Marvel Futureverse title, Spider-Man 2099. And right here, oh my God, this is gorgeous. And this old school Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2099. Oh, that was such a great read, guys. If you've never read any of the original Spider-Man 2099 books, they're really, really good stuff. I highly, highly recommend them. And surprisingly, believe it or not, the X-Men 2099 was a great read too. Now, this next full appearance is Spider-Man 2099 #1. And the team that was going to kick it off here is Peter David doing the writing, Rick Linardi doing the penciling, Al Williams inker, Rick Parker letterer, Kevin Tinsley colorist, Joe Calvarilli doing the editing, Tom DeFalco editor-in-chief. And I like how they said here, begin the future history of. And then it just says right here, Stan Lee presents Spider-Man. And there's more, there's 5 pages to this, but I just wanted to show this splash page because that is just breathtaking and dynamic. No flat panels here, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, Spider-Man 365. There's a lot to take in, but each story, because this is a 30th year anniversary and we're coming up on a 60th now. Beautiful stuff. You could tell that the people that were doing the art and writing really had an understanding and love for this character. And they wrote Peter and Gwen, Mary Jane, the Prowler, everybody in character. Not like for the longest time it seemed from, about 2010-ish, Spider-Man just kind of became like this sort of lame joke Jerry Seinfeld. And that's not Peter. When Peter fought in his, when Stan Lee wrote him, is when he got his powers, he was a little arrogant. And when he fought, his puns, they were kind of corny, but you still got a good laugh out of him because you can see that he's goading his villain into fighting him. So yeah, if you guys have enjoyed this comic book, please first and foremost, check with your local comic shop and see if they have this book in stock. If not, then, check with local collectors or, just kind of go to the secondary market if need be. But I cannot recommend this comic any higher than just like, go get it! You know what I mean? And if you've enjoyed this review, we'd really appreciate if you take a minute to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club more than you could possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little web slinger bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. Come to the channel, and we love to have a dialogue with y'all down in the comments below or on our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description below. And with all that said, I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.